my name is Patrick Hanley, and I'm a junior here at Miami University in the Lilly Leadership Institute. And we have Alex and Chris here. If you guys want to introduce yourselves a little bit.
Hi, I'm also a junior in the Leadership Institute at Miami, and we're joined today with Chris Smitherman, who is going to introduce himself and talk a little bit about what he does, and we'll ask him some questions and get his professional perspective.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, y'all. I'm Chris Smitherman, the second. I am a graduate of Miami University, class of 2018. I came through the Lilly Leadership Institute, so cohort 5. So y'all saying cohort 11, I'm like, wow, time has flown. But I'm currently a national real estate manager at McDonald's, the McDonald's Corporation, so the restaurant business. I currently handle all of their property acquisitions and new restaurant locations in 5 states in the Midwest, which include Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, and Wisconsin.
Okay, awesome. And could you talk just a little bit briefly on kind of your own personal experience with change management? What are some of the experiences that you've had kind of with that, in either roles that you've had or anything?
Yeah, sure thing. So I first start off with I do hold a master's actually in organizational leadership and change, master's of science from Colorado Technical University. So I have an academic background in understanding change management and how those processes
Awesome.
go about. At the same time, what I would say is, change. Life is change. So it's really just the study of change and how people handle it, and then also how to execute it effectively. So some instances of change that I've experienced in my professional life are, one, changing a location from city to city. So I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I transitioned in my first role with McDonald's to Buffalo, New York. So never, no family, no friends, nothing there, no base. They sent me there and I said, hey, cool, I'm gonna make it work. So really had to change my understanding of different geographic location of the United States, had to change my, different cultures come with that. So never been outside of a Midwestern culture like that. Even actually had no connection to the East Coast at all. So that was really new to me to understand that, learn that over 3 years. Now I've had an ability to transition back, not back to the Midwest, but I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is, it's similar, but different at the same time, learning those things. That's from a location perspective. From a professional perspective, I've changed roles and functions. So I began my career with McDonald's in as an operations associate in the operations department. So that was focused on running restaurants, and that's what operations means. So my role was to work with franchise owners in the Western New York area, which is Buffalo plus Rochester plus the Southern tier, what we would call it. So some smaller towns and in that northwestern part of the New York State.
Mm-hmm.
And I would help support them and help them grow their businesses, improve operations, as well as hold them to McDonald's brand standards. Doing that after 2.5 years, I transitioned into the real estate and development department. So now that's when I started doing real estate property acquisition. So that was a change of understanding the different discipline, different mindset, different way to look at the business. So that's how I've changed in that regard as well. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so next question here is change often faces resistance. Based on your experience, what strategies do you recommend for getting buy-in and overcoming resistance to change initiatives?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the biggest part of getting any change to be effective is that buy-in. So a couple things that are effective are, one, communication. I'd say that's really the biggest way you could do it. So on top of my changes, like in career wise, I've actually gone through an organizational restructure at my company. And they did that recently in April. That's the one I went through. I came in right after an organizational restructure and was still facing the ramifications of that. So while I didn't go through that process, I've gone through this one and seen it. And a lot of it comes down to communication, communicating through different mediums. So whether it's email, whether it's in-person events. So if you have in-person workshops and trainings that are meant to describe and say, hey, this is what the change looks like, this is what's going to come. And that's really important. The other way is having what you could really do to lower resistance is corral the both formal and informal leaders within an organization to get behind the message. So if you have somebody who is trusted, who is respected within that organization, the others will have that change, accept the change much easier and faster. And change is a slow process. Another strategy is you cannot rush this. It's got to be iterative. It's got to be slow. You got to start to see the breadcrumbs. And I would say with my academic training, I was able to really see them lay the foundations and seeds at my organization of the change to come, how they strategically did communications, different efforts, different things that they had going, and that led to that ultimate, bam, hey, this is the change that goes on. And then getting the buy-in to the process, always great to include those people who are undergoing the change in the process, get their feedback, get their communication, get their thoughts and ideas, because if they feel a part of it, they're more willing to change.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for the insights. Another question here. So talking about company culture, so what kind of role does a company's culture play in change management? And maybe what are some ways that you've seen a company changing or adapting to fit change management in with their unique culture? There are ways to work around it.
No, that's a great question. I would say culture is everything. So culture is, culture needs to be, I would say culture is created by the people in the organization, not the people necessarily leaders from the top. The leaders from the top, they set the tone of the organization, and they have the opportunity to control the culture and to kind of set forth the vision, which you use the vision, mission, et cetera. You set that foundation for the culture. But the other people in the organization, they ultimately, I would say, have more control and build that. So, from a change management perspective, it's just a lot of the things I mentioned before. So ideally, ideating those, taking your time, so not trying to just rush it all in one moment, because the faster you go, it's like force. I mean, if you're going to make all the change come at once as a fist, you're going to have a much greater resistance come back at it to stop it. If you have inches forward, you'll have inches of resistance back. But then again, eventually, people will come around, and you just inch forward, inch forward, inch forward.
On and ask another question that hopefully tackles a bit of a different perspective. Okay. So looking at an organization when you're implementing large change, what are some specific ways that you can really support your employees and help them through the process?
Yeah, no, that's, I would say, so listening sessions are a great way you can do it. I think listening sessions, not only from your immediate management, but also higher up level leadership in the organization. Maybe you can't, I know my organization, they had a lot of coffee chats with leaders that number of spots, but they had all these coffee chat dates and different dates with different leaders of the company to say, hey, let's talk about what are your concerns? What do you like that we're doing? What do you want to be heard? So that's a great way to get buy-in and have that conversation with your employees and get that feedback. Another way that I think is really, really effective in getting that support and helping your people through the process is to, give it, be as transparent as possible. If you are saying, like one of the things that the organization did that I thought was nice was that they didn't say specifically what, but they said, we're going to change the way that we work. And here's why we're going to change the way that we work, because these are the needs of the business that are in the future. They're XYZ. So we need to have our structure be ABC. That level of transparency is just really important to help provide that. I'd say that's a support in itself. A lot of times when people are held in the dark, I don't know what to think. And when you're doing this, especially if you're talking about changing an organization or a mindset, some people are not going to want to change. Some people are going to struggle with that, but also some people may lose their employment, may lose their jobs in the process, and their functions may no longer be there. So you have to be very sensitive on how you handle it. I understand it's business. I understand that it's work and these things can happen, but those are, approaching it with some empathy and some sensitivity, involving them in the process, having listening sessions to say, let's hear your concerns. Let's hear what we're talking about. And then addressing those things through on are great supports that you can provide to your people in the organization.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Our last kind of almost summarizing question.
Okay.
If you're looking to implement big organizational change management, like we're looking with generative AI, what are some of the big things that you need to hit on that you can't miss out on if you're trying to do something like this?
Yeah. So one, you got to have a strategic approach, and you have to understand not only where you want your organization to be in the next 2 years, but you have to understand where you want your organization to be in the next 5 to 10 years. So the changes that happen that you want to say, hey, we're going to have a process. It's going to take 6 to 12 months. We're going to have do different things at the first stage, and then it's going to take another 12 months to get us where we really want to be, right? That should also be an iterative process to get you where you want to go in the next 10 years. So let's say that's a critical success factor. You got to have people who are in leadership, who have that mindset, understand that goal and that vision for the organizational structure, and can get you there, because the last thing you want, because what will make you critically fail is if, again, you try to do too much at one time. You try to say, I'm going to get, you see it with organizations all the time where they may do a mass layoff and say, we don't need these people, but they end up trying to go back and rehire and bring that talent in. The next critical success factor in like breaking that down more is identify what are going to be the key roles and components driving your organization forward. So those should be the roles, whether they're new roles, whether they're improved roles, refined roles, whatever that is. You've got to have that critical success factor and understanding of that to be successful. You got to have a good communications plan. You need to have a good training plan as well, because you need to make sure that your employees are tooled. And this connects to the previous question, but you need to make sure employees are tooled to be able to step into that change. So if they don't have the skills necessary, we talk about generative AI, they don't have the skills necessary to hone AI, to manage what AI is going to do, then the chances of success are low, or you're going to have a longer learning curve. So understand that's definitely high level critical success factor that you got to have, that the training component, the tooling component. And then I just say big one is just patience, patience and willingness to change. I mean, these are roadmaps that these companies create. They create these big roadmaps and, hey, we want to go where we want to do. Well, sometimes, like all of us do, you get focused on the next step so much, where this is where that long-term planning comes into play. You got to be thinking about what the outcome is and long-term outcome. If you're finding that you're getting a lot of resistance in this area from your people, if you're finding that this isn't quite working, you need to be able to pivot fast, and you need to be able to change fast. So I know in engineering, a professor, John Richter, give him his credit. I remember he used to say fail fast, fail often. At Miami University, I'd say you got to be ready to fail fast, fail often. It's okay. You're going to try things, you're going to do things, but you got to be able to fail. You have to show and lead that you can change just as much as you want others to change. So I'd say those are some big critical success factors.
Fantastic. Those are some wonderful insights. Thank you very much for joining us today and for all of your awesome perspectives on change management, because I know it can certainly be a very complicated issue, especially when it comes to large organizations. So thank you for your expertise and for joining us here today.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Of course.